Nation in Conversation, taking you on a journey through the South African countryside. Proudly sponsored by Monsanto, Nedbank and Senves, in association with Aggrey, Hinterland and NWK.
Hello and welcome to Nation in Conversation. We're traveling through the countryside of South Africa, unearthing a treasure of industries and attractions along the way, including the local produce that remains the heartbeat of each area's existence. Today's episode is no exception. In this episode, we visit the heart of the Cape Karoo, Beaufort West, with its friendly people, unending horizons and rich history. We'll also spend some time looking at the lamb industry, Karoo Lamb in particular. Here is what you can expect. In Homegrown, we explore the town of Beaufort West and visit a local sheep farmer, Johnny Tennyson, on his farm Skeerfontein. During In Context, we visit the impressive BKB wool handling facility in Port Elizabeth. Our weekly guest, Chris Burgess, editor of Landbouweekblad, also joins us to share his expert opinions. Theo then concludes the program by discussing the current issues within the industry in dialogue.
Beaufort West, a favourite rest stop on the long road to Cape Town. It is also one of the oldest towns in South Africa. With its rich history, the town of Beaufort West has many stories and treasures to explore. Beaufort West's most famous son is arguably Dr. Chris Barnard. This world-renowned heart surgeon is honoured with a museum in town. The Barnard family home, as well as the church where his father served, also forms part of this museum. Karoo Lamb is also proudly associated with the region, and rightly so, as this industry plays a key role in the economy and tourism of the region. There are several other attractions that make a stopover at Beaufort West unforgettable, such as the Karoo National Park, the famous Dutch Reformed Church, and the awe-inspiring architecture, which can be explored through guided walking tours through town. Deputy Mayor Dalian Slabbert tells us why this town is so unique.
What makes Beaufort West so unique is the vastness of the Karoo around us. It's the people. The people in Beaufort West are really friendly, and they take in outsiders, and they really make it pleasant for people to stay in Beaufort West. And of course the silence is very important for visitors who come to Beaufort West. It's important for all of us. That's what makes us stay in Beaufort West. That's what keeps us here.
Did you know Beaufort West was the first municipality in South Africa, established in February 1837. The town also boasts the oldest town hall. On the farm Skeerfontein, we gathered around the campfire with Johnny Tennyson, who has been farming in this region for over 18 years. He tells us more about Karoo Lamb.
Well, I decided to farm in the Beaufort West district because I was, let's say, born and bred here. I went to school here at the local high school, Central High, and then I went and I studied at the University of Nelson Mandela University, the old University of Port Elizabeth. Came back, taught here in Beaufort West, and I always had a craving for farming. And then a small piece of land came into the market and I was able to buy it. You know, when I started farming, you could have bought a drum of diesel for a few sheep. Today, I mean, you just can't do it. We survived, but economical unit in the Karoo is between 8,000 and 10,000 hectares at this stage. And if you multiply that by 2,000, then it's about 20 million rand. We supply meat to the domestic market through a registered abattoir, which is situated on the farm. The uniqueness of Karoo Lamb is, of course, you know, coming from the Karoo. Now, the Karoo is quite a large part of our country. And it is a, you know, it's a very healthy part for sheep farming. with Beaufort West, if you take away the agriculture, I mean, there is no economy in Beaufort West whatsoever. You must remember we've got 420 registered farms, and if you just take the farm workers with the owner, etc., they spend their money in Beaufort, it's quite a few million. And then, of course, you know, tourism coming through Beaufort is a plus point for Beaufort. Agriculture drives tourism, for sure, and we need it. And if we can drive tourism well, it can be a flourishing business in the Karoo.
Who better to speak to about tourism in the area than two local farm stall workers? We spoke to Leanne and Katrina Mans, who work at the Skeerfontein Road stall.
To see new people, the tourists come during the year, all kinds of people, different cultures. I'm learning every day something new. So that's why I like it.
My favorite thing to working here in this farm stall is with the customers. I'm a little bit crazy with them, but they love it. So for me, it's actually fun, and I love it.
Tourists come to Beaufort West to enjoy the peace and quiet, just to relax. And to see the veld, it's just peaceful, and they just love it. Tourism is very important for the road stalls because it's got very interesting stuff. And most of them are handmade, and that's what tourists likes, handmade stuff. But here especially they come for our very nice coffee, our own mix. Because of farmers in and out around Beaufort West, everyone's going to job every day. It's not like they're sitting around and doing nothing. You know, there's a job to go to every day.
Leanne aspires to have her own business one day. She tells us more about what she would like to achieve.
For me, I want to have a shop where I can do clothing, as well as my hair, manicure and pedicure. And along with it, I have a small restaurant next where you can go and buy something to eat. So this farm stall helped me with my skills to work with customers, how to buy stuff, how to work with money. And that's how I want to run my business one day.
When tourists come, I can't speak for Beaufort West itself, but when they come to the road store, I can see that their faces lighten up and say, wow, what are you doing here between nothing and nowhere? You are just a blessing. We can drink something cold. So it means a lot for us.
Our planning is really to get job creation on the go. And the only way we're going to do it is by agriculture and tourism. And if we can bring the two together, it's going to make a very big difference in the lives of a lot of people in this town.
Did you know there are over 3 million Dorper sheep in the Karoo region?
Beaufort West is a truly beautiful area. I think more city slickers need to make a plan to go there and unwind and recharge. Meat is not the only product of sheep farming. After the break, we visit the BKB wool handling facility, and Chris Burgess joins us to discuss the industry as a whole. We'll be back right after the break. Welcome back to Nation in Conversation. Remember to join the discussions on Twitter and Facebook. Your opinions matter. Today we are discussing the sheep industry in South Africa, and with me is Chris Burgess, editor of Landbouweekblad, here to share his insights. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
Most of South Africa, a nation of briars. There's nothing better than a lamb chop on the braai. Why is lamb so expensive?
Well, I don't think it is that expensive. I mean, if you look in a retailer, you pay, what, 128 Rand a kilo for loin chops. And what most consumers don't realize is that loin chop is only one cut out of many out of a sheep carcass. So I think that the secret is to educate the consumer to use more of the sheep carcass, which will allow the retailer to drop that price on the prime cut slightly. The The other issue one must remember is that the supermarket's price formation isn't in accordance with supply and demand. So over Christmas, a supermarket will raise its prices because there's a big demand from the consumer, irrespective of what the demand is from the farmer, and then in the new year they'll drop it again. So no, I don't think that lamb chops are too expensive. I think one just needs to look at all the cuts and maybe shop around a little.
How are mutton farmers dealing with competitions from other types of meat like chicken or pork?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the mutton farmers get 65% out of the consumer rand, which is actually higher than most other farming disciplines, more than wine, more than milk. You know, mutton is very different to pork or chicken because it's not intensively farmed, so it's a very healthy product. It's farmed extensively. And farmers are looking at many ways of differentiating mutton products. I mean, one of the really heartening examples is Karoo Lamb, which is now internationally recognized as a product of origin, the same as champagne from the Champagne region in France or Parma ham from the Parma region of Italy. And basically, only those farmers farming sheep in that area where those 5 shrubs grow that give the taste its distinctive taste, those guys sort of qualify for this certified scheme. And then there are other schemes too. You know, there's free range, and there are many ways that farmers are trying to differentiate the product and actually sort of give the product the recognition for what it is. You know, it's a really luxury, healthy, fantastic product.
Thanks, Chris. Before we continue our discussion with Chris, let's visit the BKB wool handling facility in the Nelson Mandela Metro. South Africa produces some of the highest quality wool to the international markets. Let's have a look at this impressive operation.
BKB wool handling facility in Port Elizabeth processes approximately 65% of all the sheep wool in South Africa. They shared some interesting insights with us. They also offer a training and employment program for the hearing impaired, which makes a significant difference in the lives of many people in the community.
BKB is the leading broker for wool in South Africa. We are proud to say that we enjoy a 65% market share in South African wool, where we sell wool on behalf of clients, which are wool producers countrywide, most weeks of the year on the international market in Port Elizabeth, where the wool exchange is situated. We started a project in BKB where we said we want to make a real difference in people's lives. It mustn't be just a nice story with a little bit of hot air and then everything fades away with time. It must be real and it must be sustainable. So we started the project where we empower ladies with hearing disabilities. They assist us in our wool sorting process, where we render a service to clients to sort some lines of their wool to prepare that for the international export market. And I must say they do an excellent job in doing that.
Rensburg Achenbach is an assistant manager at BKB. He is hearing impaired, and one of his roles is to assist with communication with other hearing impaired employees within the organization. Rensburg told us more about the responsibilities of the various employees on the premises.
We are so plus minus 30 people near BKB, but there is men and women, and men there is 12 men. So there are 2 different groups. 2 different groups is they sorting baskets. The second group they work on pressures. They come for the women. What the women do is they sort the wool, and there's checker specialists like she, and the other women is work with tables as well.
He also introduced us to Jolene Abrams, one of the wool sorters that benefits from this initiative. Rensburg asked Jolene if she likes her work and what she would like to achieve.
She likes very much. She likes the sign where you so much, but she loves it so much to work and pick up. She work now and at the tables. In the past, she worked with wool, sort with wool. But she see in the future, she focused too about to be checker to what she wants.
Wool is a magnificent natural fiber, and it is one of the receivers of foreign currency into South Africa. and a great stimulator in our agricultural business. And we would like people to support our wool growers and support the fantastic merino wool that we handle on behalf of our growers countrywide.
Did you know the sheep wool industry in South Africa is responsible for an annual economic contribution of about 2.5 billion rand?
How amazing is it that South Africa is such a massive exporter of top quality merino wool on the international market? Chris, back to you. Let's talk about wool. How are wool farmers specifically doing?
They're actually doing remarkably well. It's actually quite an amazing story. You know, there's about 25 million kilograms of wool shortage globally. Our biggest competitor, Australia, I mean, their wool industry is busy, is getting smaller. Droughts, very expensive labour. So there's really a global demand for wool. It's a green product. It's a green fibre. You know, you just have to look at, for instance, Nike. That they've got a whole new clothing line, sports clothing line made out of wool. So I mean, there's a great future for wool, and wool farmers are doing well. And of course, the currency helps our exports as well.
Wool farming has a long history in this country.
Yes, it does. I mean, the first merino sheep arrived in South Africa in 1789. It was actually animals from the King of Spain's flock. They first made a detour through Holland. The climate wasn't exactly conducive, so they were exported to South Africa. They arrived here. The governor at the Cape, the Dutch governor, he started farming with them. And then in 1795, when the British took over the Cape, some of those, the governor committed suicide, strangely enough, and some of those animals ended up on a ship and went to Australia, and that's how the Australian wool industry started. And I think it was about 1815, you know, the first merinos were commercially farmed in the Overberg. So, you know, barring, you know, the wine and the fruit industry, one of our oldest farming industries.
It is one of the oldest farming industries, but how is it adapting to the new South Africa?
Yeah, it's a fantastic story. I mean, how black and white wool farmers have been working together for years now, and it's quite interesting. The National Wool Growers Association, which is the farmer body, I mean, it's got more black members than white members. And how it works is the commercial farmers have been donating and selling at huge discounts, been selling superiorly genetic grams, which helps these more or less 20,000 black farmers in the former homelands to produce more wool and produce better wool, which then gets taken up by the supply chain, guys like BKB and CMW, which then sells the wool into foreign markets. So you've got these guys in the homelands that are suddenly earning money from an export product. And at the last check, I think it was 253 million they earned in 1 year. So, you know, it's an amazing story out of the perspective of white and black guys working together, and black farmers really transforming their lives, you know.
Thanks very much, Chris. Insightful as always. We'll see you again next week. After the commercial break, we join Theo for an in-depth discussion in Dialogue.
Welcome back to Nation in Conversation. Today we are discussing the sheep industry in South Africa in more detail. Joining me in the studio is Dr. Pieter Prinsloo from the Red Meat Producers Association and Aggrey Mahanjana from NERPO. Welcome.
Thank you.
Pieter, I want to start with you. The size of the sheep industry in South Africa, how big is it?
We have got figures of 24 million sheep in the country, of which about 3 million are in the hands of communal farmers, of emerging farmers. And we also have a slaughter figures, that is now formal slaughter figures, of roughly 5.5 million per year. Now, with the current drought we've had the last 2 years, we believe that the female herd is down by 12%. So we are going into a herd rebuilding phase, which is going to mean less meat available on the market. And higher prices. And higher prices, yes.
Aggrey, the view is that sheep meat, lamb, mutton, is expensive. Your view?
Well, it is expensive. It's a very relative term to say it is expensive compared to what? Yes, it's expensive when you compare to beef. It's expensive when you compare to chicken and even pork. But however, you must understand that the price determination in any commodity is a matter of demand and supply. And also it's a matter of taste. Yes, in terms of the income to the farmer, we wouldn't say it's expensive. In terms of the consumer itself, yes, when he compares the meat of mutton and lamb to other red meats, it is per kg, it will be seen as expensive.
But is it not a question that if the consumer compares it, they compare the loin chops, and that is almost the most expensive part of the animal? Is there not a logic in that?
Theo, that is so true. And you see on social media, there's a lot of reference to the farmer gets so much per kilogram, and that is what it cost in the butchery shelf, which we believe is the wrongest message to get out. Now, first of all, just to go a step back, sheep and mutton and lamb in South Africa is already in a niche market. It's not a commodity. We must get that clear. And we're also advertising it as a protein source for the higher income groups. In other words, your LSM 8 to 10. Whereas it will form part of a balanced meal maybe twice, maybe 3 times a week. It's not a commodity where you eat every day. So yes, it's a niche market already. We're a net importer in South Africa. We are short currently. But the problem is, yeah, if we get down to the pricing structure, if we look at a block test, now a block test is done by a retailer to actually determine the price of the meat. Now, if his block test, he changes the factor, maybe he on average, he wants to net a 30% gross margin, and his loin chops, which consists of 9% of the carcass, is more popular than any of the other cuts. What is he going to do? That's business. He'll put up that price. You know, he'll put it higher. So what we're saying is we must have a carcass approach. Our consumer must understand that he must rather go and shop maybe together with neighbors or friends or family, but buy a whole carcass. He will get those exclusive or those better cuts at a much cheaper rate then. Because we are causing our own problems by demanding the more expensive cut of
consumer,
the lamb.
Yes. Just to take it one step back, you noted, and Aggrey noted it as well, the split between what the producer gets and what the consumer pays. In the sheep world, what is that split? Because I believe there's, in most cases of agriculture, it differs, and there's sometimes a very low split. What is the split in the sheep industry?
You know, that's also a very debatable point. It depends on where the retail is situated, or what is the client base, you know, consumer base that maybe uses that facility. But yes, we actually had a price transmission project that we, from the red meat industry, we sponsored that over the last few years. And it was done in Bloemfontein only, where 3 supermarkets and 1 butcher was then monitored in terms of certain cuts. But it looks like the rand value, the consumer rand value of the producer is closer to 65%, which is by far the highest in the whole industry. Back to the problem again, you know, it looks like our farmers cannot make it, even with that kind of gap. So we need to make other plans in terms of this.
Other plans. So if you're under pressure in terms of that margin, Aggrey, from other plans perspective, is there logic to try not to sell sheep meat always as a commodity? Is there logic to try to build a trademark or a client base or distribution outlets? Is there logic in that?
I think, as Pieter has already mentioned, that mutton and lamb specifically, we must not regard it as a commodity. We must regard it as a niche. So to build a form of a market specifically for it, it's a much more better approach if you establish a brand. I mean, you understand that we do have what is called Karoo Lamb.
Yes.
Which is a brand. There is another one which is from in Namibia, I don't know what they call it. But if one establishes a brand, because this is a niche for niche market, for exclusive consumers, obviously you will be able to make the fall that Pieter is talking about in order to make the farmer. I mean, already there are specific farmers who are slaughtering down and supply a very lucrative markets both in the Western Cape and also in Gauteng. But they are supplying this market on a specific brands. So we will really support such an idea if the farmers want to make something from the sheep meat.
And that is part of moving away from a pure commodity. But there's another thing. Sheep carries wool. The wool industry is supplying a strong base for the sheep farmers. Just give us some background, Pieter.
The wool industry does support, yes, and it's very comfortable to be in an export commodity. You know, our whole wool clip gets exported as a whole. We've only recently started washing again in South Africa. The wool washers closed down due to various reasons in the past, but we export our whole clip and we move, and it's nice. So in other words, if the rand depreciates, the wool farmers smile, you know. So that is, but again, if we put it in context, the ratio between wool and meat is 80 to 20%. It's 80% meat production and 20% wool only. So the wool, and if we look at most of our indigenous herds in South Africa are not wool sheep, you know. So we must not leave the dorper farmers behind, and those in terms of the actual meat price that we need to get to make things.
Thank you very much, Pieter. Thanks, Aggrey. Please join us next week for another in-depth discussion on some of the good stories in the farming industry.
Thank you, Theo. Some wonderful insights into the sheep and lamb industry. Next week, we travel to the Eastern Cape to showcase the dairy industry. This area is also home to a wonderful transformation project that is investing in the future. Until next week, remember to exercise your right as consumer and join the conversation. It affects us all. Until then, goodbye.
Nation in Conversation, taking you on a journey through the South African countryside. Proudly sponsored by Monsanto, Nedbank and Senves, in association with Aggrey, Hinterland and NWK.